Welcome to r/slash entitled parents, where unfortunately an entitled mother kills a child. I've seen a lot of crazy people in my life, but my potential mother-in-law is the absolute worst person I've ever met. I, a 30-year-old woman, have been with my boyfriend, a 31-year-old man, for 8 months now. For the first few months, everything was amazing. He's the sweetest and most caring man I've ever been with. He likes to surprise me with fun dates and flowers for no apparent reason. The biggest surprise of all, though, was when I met his mother. I met his parents for the first time a few months ago. The first thing mother-in-law said to me when I walked in the door was, "Are you Jewish?" I'm not, and I'm not particularly religious, but I was raised Catholic. Once I told her this, it was the beginning of the madness. She immediately stopped talking to me and acted as if I didn't exist. I was extremely nervous about meeting my boyfriend's parents, so this broke my heart. I was determined to make a good impression, so I kept trying to connect with her. This was a huge mistake, and I should have just let it go. Once we were all seated for dinner, she finally decided to try and make conversation. I have naturally red hair, and she asked me if my parents had the same color. I told her that I had the same hair as my mother. She then had the audacity to ask me, "Does the carpet match the drapes?" I had no idea how to respond and just sat there stunned. Seeing my reaction, she said, "Don't worry, I'll just ask my son about it later." I looked over at my boyfriend, who seemed equally as shocked, but he didn't say anything. She then started to go on about my hair being too curly. She told me that I really need to learn how to run a brush through my hair and think about my appearance more when I'm out with her son. Then, when I didn't eat much at dinner, she gave me her version of a compliment. I was told it was good that I was watching what I eat because it would be a shame if I got any bigger. This was just my first meeting with this woman. As soon as I got into my car, I burst into tears until I got home. My boyfriend was texting me and apologizing for his mother's behavior, but the damage was done, and I told him I needed time to think. He went into apology overload after this and started sending flowers to my office every day and leaving me messages begging me to talk to him. I finally agreed, and we went out to dinner. He told me he spoke with his mother about her inappropriate comments, and he swore it would never happen again. With this reassurance, I decided to give it another chance. Fast forward 2 weeks to when he invited me to come to a family birthday party. This time, I would also be meeting his sisters and grandparents. His grandparents and sisters are awesome people. They asked me normal questions about my job, family, and friends. His mother seemed to be avoiding me throughout the evening, and honestly, I was okay with that. I went to grab something from my purse and noticed that it wasn't where I left it. I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find it. I went and asked my boyfriend, and he began to help me look. He then got a strange look on his face, and he quickly went upstairs. I could then hear a lot of yelling begin upstairs. He came back down holding my purse after a few minutes and told me that we were leaving. Once we got in the car, I asked him what was going on. His mother had taken my purse so that she could see my driver's license. She intended to try and run a background check on me. He told me she told him this earlier, but honestly had thought she was joking. I thought that it was best if I avoided any of his family functions for the time being. This worked out great for a while, and he went to any of his family parties alone. He would ask me each time before leaving if I was sure that I didn't want to go, but I always declined. Last week, his family had their family reunion, and he asked me to please come with him. I was very reluctant, but considering there would be so many people present, I didn't think she would pull anything. When we got there, everything was going great. I met his extended family and got to catch up with his sisters. His mother did seem to be shooting me death glares all night, but I brushed it off. Soon, she came over and joined a table I was seated at with his sisters and some cousins. The conversation was pleasant as we were talking about his sister's children. His sister has a daughter who's 12 and is the same age as my niece. I then showed his sister a picture of my niece on the phone. My boyfriend's mother took a look at the screen and began to laugh. She told me she hopes that if me and her son ever have children that they don't look like my niece. My niece is beautiful, by the way, and she's only 12 years old. What kind of monster attacks a 12-year-old's appearance? This was my breaking point, and I went off like a volcano. I started to scream at her and told her she's the most evil person I've ever had the displeasure to meet. I told her if I ever did have children with her son, she can be certain she'll never meet them because hell is too far to travel to. I'm not 100% certain exactly everything that I said, but from what his younger sister said later, it was epic. She began to play the victim and wailed that I just misunderstood her joke. My boyfriend came rushing over at this point and she threw herself into his arms, telling him how I'm a horrible woman and he needed to throw me out right now. He told her that wasn't going to happen and to stop making a fool of herself. She seemed to accept this for a moment and sat back down. She just kept sobbing that I just didn't understand how to take a joke. Then, something in her snapped as she noticed something that my boyfriend was holding in his hand and began to have another meltdown. I didn't understand what was happening at this point and just stood there watching a grown woman pitch a fit like a toddler. None of what she was saying made any sense to me as it was mostly just incoherent screaming, but I did pick up on many derogatory comments directed my way. My boyfriend then told me we were leaving and told me to grab my things. As I started to get ready, my mother-in-law made a lunge from my boyfriend's hand and grabbed the small box he was holding. She then looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You will never have this ring, you little grunt." She ran outside and threw the box down a storm drain. Turns out that my boyfriend was intending on proposing to me. He had just obtained his grandmother's ring while we were at the reunion. His grandmother is completely heartbroken because now her ring is down a storm drain instead of continuing on in the family as she'd always wanted. I don't know where to go from here. I am devastated, confused, and exhausted. Can I ask him to never see his mother again? Is that my place to say something like that? I'm sorry that my story is so long, but I really needed to get this rant off my chest. OP, that woman is legitimately sick. I highly recommend you go check out rSlash for mother-in-law because there are lots of people in similar situations. Their stories are equally insane and I kind of wish I could cover them, but it's a support sub and not an entertainment sub, so that would feel a little disrespectful. But definitely check it out because you would be in good company there. Our next Reddit post is from One Who Lived. This happened in August 2017 and involves two lengthy lawsuits, one of which lasted 1.5 years and another for almost 2 years. I'm not directly involved in it as it happened to my sister-in-law. Back in 2017, my sister-in-law was in her final year for nursing school. She was required to intern as trainee nurse for 6 months. She chose to join a private school for her internship. It was one of those international private schools where kids of ultra-rich parents go. Part 1. The incident. The 15th of August is India's Independence Day, and there was a celebration in the school. It was your usual flag ceremony with a flag march by students and a student band, some plays by students depicting events of freedom, some cultural exhibition put together by each class, food and game stalls by teachers, etc. At the end of the day, the top 3 class performances, plays and cultural exhibitions were awarded, and select students were given certificates of excellence for outstanding performances. Everything was going normal in the beginning, but a student collapsed during the parade, so he was brought into the doctor's office. The doctor checked him and found that he was running a moderate fever. He was also slightly dehydrated. So the doctor gave him some medicine and asked my sister-in-law to give him a glass of glucose water. He scolded the kid for participating in the parade while having a fever and wrote him a note excusing him from any further activity. He then asked the kid if his parents were present, and the kid said that his mother was there. So the doctor told him he could go home if he wanted, or he could sit in the shade with his mother to watch the rest of the ceremony. The kid asked if he could just stay there and rest for a while, so the doctor said that he could use one of the beds to take a nap. Since there was nothing else to do in the office, the doctor excused himself to go and have something to eat from the stalls, leaving my sister-in-law and a janitor in the office. Hardly 5 minutes later, the entitled mother marched in the office and went directly to check on her child. My sister-in-law tried to tell her that the kid was running a fever and taking a nap, but entitled mother ignored her. She shook the kid and asked him how he was feeling. The kid said fine. Entitled mother said, "Good, now get up. You gotta get ready for your play, sweetie. Everyone else is already dressed up." My sister-in-law again tried to explain. He's running a fever, he wants to rest. Entitled mother replied, "Oh, it's fine. He's fine. Aren't you, sweetie?" The kid just looked at my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law said, "The doctor has excused him from other activities. It would be better if you just take him home and let him rest." Entitled mother said, "It's just a play. I'm sure my sweetie can handle it. He's a tough man. Isn't that right, sweetie?" My sister-in-law tried again. It would be better for him to just rest. He's still under a fever. And with that, entitled mother lost her mind. She screamed in my sister-in-law's face. "Oh, you know what's better for him. I'm his mother. I know what's best for him. How dare you? My son is the top of his class. He's playing the most important part in the play. He is the best. If he doesn't participate in the play, he won't get the certificate of excellence. He needs to stay at the top of everything or else he'll become a laughing stock. So don't you dare tell me what's better for him." The kid, seeing his mother losing her mind, stood up and said to my sister-in-law with a smile, "It's okay, sister. I'm fine. Thanks for caring for me." Shocked and stunned, my sister-in-law only managed to say, "Let me call the doctor." The entitled mother retorted, "I come from a family of doctors. My father is a director at a well-known private hospital. You people aren't even qualified enough to work in a hospital." Huh. She grabbed the arm of her child and marched away. My sister-in-law called the doctor, who said, "Well, it's her child. What can we do? We did our part." About an hour later, the same kid was rushed in again as he again collapsed during the play. The doctor checked on him, gave him an injection, and asked him to be transferred to a hospital immediately as the kid was unconscious and not responding. An ambulance was called and the kid was taken to a hospital. The day ended without any other incident. 2 days later, the school learned that the kid passed away in the hospital. My sister-in-law was distraught upon hearing the news. She kept crying for the rest of the day. She kept saying how it was her fault and how she could have prevented it if she had stood her ground, how the kid smiled at her and thanked her for caring for him. We told her that it wasn't her fault and consoled her to the best of our abilities. Even her professor from nursing school came and tried to make her feel better. About a week later, she was informed that the school was opening an inquiry and a board of inquiry will look into the matter and that she'll be called for interview. The doctor assured her that it was just a formality for school to cover all the bases and she didn't need to worry about it. In her interview, she stated everything that happened. She was then asked why she felt it was her fault, as she said so to the class teacher of the kid in her crying fit. She explained that at the time, she was overwhelmed by emotions and thought she could have done things differently. She was asked if there was anyone who would corroborate her story, and she named the janitor who was present in the office at the time. She was then informed that she was placed under suspension until the inquiry concludes. When she went back to collect her things from the office, the doctor once again assured her that there was nothing to worry about. He'll make sure that no harm will come to her. A few days later, she received a letter from the school that they concluded the investigation and found her guilty of negligence, and thus her contract was terminated. She called the school supervisor, who informed her that her story didn't match the story told by the doctor and the janitor, thus there was nothing that can be done. Termination of contract meant that she couldn't complete her final term on time, so she applied for an extension to the nursing school. She thought it was over, but boy, were we in for a bomb dropped on us. Part 2, the legal trouble. A few days later, 2 cops knocked on the door of my father-in-law and asked to speak to my sister-in-law. They informed them that the family of the kid filed an FIR, a first incident report, against my sister-in-law. They accused her of causing the death of the kid. They asked if they could question her, but my father-in-law denied them and told them they could only question her in the presence of a lawyer. So the cop asked her to come to the police station the next day for questioning. We got a lawyer immediately, who at first called the cops and asked for a later date to be set for the questioning. Then he told us to get an anticipatory bail ASAP in case police decides to arrest her, so we did. In the questioning, the lawyer talked for the most part. He provided them with a written statement of my sister-in-law. The police asked their questions and directed my sister-in-law to not leave the state without informing them first, etc. A few more days go by, and she received a summons from the court as the state decided to try her for the crime. The lawyer suggested tracking down and speaking to the janitor, as he was the only witness in the otherwise she said case. And so we did. The janitor was reluctant to talk at first, but after my sister-in-law begged him, he told us that the doctor told him that if he told the truth, he'll be admitting to the same mistake that nurse did and will be fired for sure. And the only way to save himself was to tell the story that the doctor was telling him. The story the doctor told to the school's board of inquiry was that the doctor had the kid under observation with the strict instruction that he would not be released under any circumstances, and that my sister-in-law released the kid without asking or informing him. We asked him to testify in court, which at first he refused, but later agreed with a bit of persuasion. Once we had the janitor on our side, the lawyer also filed a case of wrongful termination against the school, accusing the inquiry of being partial and biased. Once the court hearing started, we learned that the entitled mother told complete lies to the father of the kid. She never told him that she forced the kid to perform in the play. Instead, she said the kid wanted to play his part. She also hid the fact that the nurse objected and showed her the doctor's note. Her story was that the kid wanted to participate in the play, and when she asked the nurse said everything was fine and he could play his part. The case went on for a year and a half. The janitor provided his testimony, which the prosecution tried to discredit, saying that he told a different story during the school inquiry, so he wasn't a reliable witness. But the judge refused, taking note that the doctor tried to intimidate him, and in turn asked the prosecution if they investigated the doctor's part in the incident as to why he forced the janitor to lie and why was he not present during his duty hours. When prosecution replied in the negative, the judge asked the police to file a case against the school doctor. When my sister-in-law was on the stand, she got very emotional and started crying as she recounted the events of that entire day. The only witness prosecution had was the child's mother, who couldn't keep her story straight during cross-questioning. Finally, in the judgment, the court ruled in my sister-in-law's favor, noting that the prosecution's witness had massive holes in her story, while the defendant provided a solid witness. He also noted that even if prosecution was to be believed, the defendant, being only a trained nurse, wasn't even qualified to release the student. And by taking the kid away without the doctor's express opinion, the responsibility of consequences fell on the mother of the child. He also commented on school's mismanagement. By not having a fully qualified nurse, they were in violation of federal laws. He scolded the prosecution for having tunnel vision and going after the defendant, who was obviously innocent and a vulnerable young girl herself. After the court ruled in her favor, the school decided to settle the wrongful termination case. It was finalized last month and we can finally put it all behind us. However, due to all the emotional distress and trauma, my sister-in-law decided to drop out of nursing school, thus ending her dreams of becoming a nurse. She'll probably join an honors course next year, but right now, she's still troubled with the nightmares of going to jail and needs therapy to get over it. The police opened a fresh case against the doctor, who was let go from the school this year. He's also being investigated by the state's medical association for wrongdoings. If found guilty, he'll be barred from practice. We have no information on entitled mother or her husband. Man, that story is crazy. To be honest, it sounds like something you'd see in like a courtroom drama or like a police mystery show. Your sister is so lucky that the janitor finally told the truth. If he hadn't, she'd probably be in jail right now. Our next Reddit post is from r/callousheart. This just happened to me, and I'm both shocked and laughing my arse off. I was on a bus on my way into college listening to a punk band I've recently got heavily into. A band from Brixen in the German-speaking region of South Tyrol in Italy called Frey Wild. The bus is fairly packed, so I'm right at the front of the bus where you'd park a pram or a wheelchair. A woman with a pram gets onto the bus and sits in the only free seat next to me. She looks down at my phone, why I still can't work out, and sees that I'm listening to a song called Sieger stehen da auf wo Verlier liegen bleiben. Roughly translated, rather aptly, to winners stand where losers fall. And she yanks one of my earphones out. You live in Scotland. Stop listening to your sucky Polish music. God, all of you effing Polacks are all the same. Refusing to be decent citizens and speak English. This is why we voted to leave the EU. Scotland didn't, but I digress. So we could get you our words out of here. I'm Scottish, born and bred. Apart from a week in Amsterdam, 2 weeks in Morocco, 3 weeks in the States, and a week in France, I've stayed very much in the UK my entire life. Never been to Poland, or Germany for that matter. I eventually had enough of her BS, so I tried to put her in her place. This is German music. Also, I was born here, to Scottish parents. Karen tried to make a rebuttal, but I got there first. Also, how does me listening to some punk rock that happens to be in German affect you? I have my headphones, you can't hear it. Karen's eyes lit up as if she'd won the Karen lottery. Why are you listening to that sinful, demonic music in public? You're gonna scare my kid. I look in the pram. Firstly, your child is sound asleep. Secondly, I have my headphones in. You can't hear it, your kid can't hear it. F off and let me listen to my music in peace. Maybe Polish people aren't the problem in this country. Maybe it's stuck-up, judgmental, racist grunts like you. As I called her out on her BS, she whacked the stop button and yeeted herself in the pram right off the bus at the next stop. Thank you. That was r/EntitledParents, and please hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit content every single day.